Whether your team is forming, storming, norming, or performing, setting guiding principles will help you build strong teams as well as understand what are the core behaviors you'd like to have exhibited by each of the individuals on your team. This week on the Practicing Leader podcast, we'll be talking about setting guiding principles for your team. I'm your host, Parul Bhargava, and let's discuss. As I said, building a strong team requires a solid foundation, and that foundation comes in setting guiding principles. We've all been there where you get that sheet of paper saying, by the way, these are our guiding principles, or these are the behaviors I want you to exhibit. Getting that list from somebody and hanging it up on the wall, not exactly a way to be able to engender a sense of commitment behind that actual behind those actual statements. I'll use a simple example. If I ask you to take out a piece of paper and to draw a car, every single person's idea of what a car is would be different. And a car is a pretty tangible thing. Instead of a car, which is very tangible, to then use something that is more conceptual, like I want everyone to respect one another. Saying respect will be different to each individual. For step one of this process, it is important to involve every single team member from the get-go. This will allow you to be able to bring in their input as well as lock in their commitment, which is crucial for success. As in my example of talking about respect as a concept, to avoid misunderstandings, for step two, we need to make sure that we've brought everyone along and we're defining these concepts together. Because if you don't, what's going to end up happening is that everyone's going to have a separate definition of what they think it means to them, rather than a shared definition that everyone understands. Having that shared perspective will allow there to be clarity, so that way you can avoid future conflicts. Every one of us has had both positive and negative experiences at work. It is important for us to be able to identify what people's concepts of both positive and negative are to help us understand what exactly do we want our group culture to be. Step three is to discuss both those positive and negative experiences together to identify what behaviors led to success and what behaviors to avoid. Now that you've had those conversations about what both those desirable and undesirable behaviors are, step four involves brainstorming those things together to be able to identify what are some of the behaviors or principles we would like to have followed on this team, and to list every single one out. And just like any other brainstorming exercise, write everything down, don't wordsmith anything, and make sure to include everyone's words on the brainstorming list. This will make sure that everyone feels like they're engaged and included in this process, and that's a way to be able to draw everyone into the conversation. By creating a concrete and actionable guiding set of principles, this will guide your teams towards success. Now that you've taken the time to brainstorm all of these ideas, begin narrowing these down to roughly 6 to 9 guiding principles or behaviors. This is where quality is better than quantity. This is where you want to take the time and make sure, as you're narrowing these themes down, that you're also double checking with each individual to make sure, hey, we're about to collapse these two ideas or concepts together, or these behaviors together. Does this still represent what you were describing? And taking the time to ensure that the team remains aligned on what the choices are for what those 6 to 9 are. The final step is to seek commitment from each and every team member. This is where I would go around the room one by one, ask them yes or no what they can commit to these guiding principles. Don't spend any more time other than wait for an immediate yes or mark someone down as a no. Don't make a big deal about it, just simply move on to the next person and go around the room. If there's any hesitation, take the time to understand their concerns. This is where you'll be able to go through, have a conversation and say, hey, so-and-so, I noticed that you hesitated when I asked you if you're willing to commit to these guiding principles. That's okay. Can you give me more information? Can you tell me more about what causes you to hesitate? This will help bring out any sort of background or any sort of context that you may have been missed during the previous conversations. This will help everyone become more committed to what these principles are. That way everyone is on board. Taking the time to go through these steps, working with your team to identify these guiding principles will allow you to be able to build a stronger team where everyone is headed in the exact same direction. When everyone is on the same page and working towards a common goal, success is just around the corner. If you found this video helpful and you're watching this on YouTube, please go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you found this content to be valuable. If you're listening to this as a podcast, please go ahead and leave a rating to be able to give me your feedback and so I can hear more about what you're thinking. If you have any questions about this podcast or any other, you can always feel free to go ahead and drop me a line. You can go ahead and give me a call at 206 651 4312 and leave a message. Or alternatively, you can send me an email at questions@thepraxingleader.com. I'll go ahead and weave it into whatever conversation we have in the next podcast and make sure that your question gets answered. This has been the Praxing Leader Podcast. I'm your host, Prul Bhargava, and I'll talk to you next week.